Count Pierre Montaigne was widely known throughout high society for his boundless passion for luxurious parties and extravagant amusements. Every night, his vast hall gleamed with vibrant music, loud laughter, and splendid banquets that delighted all in attendance. There were always card games underway, and an endless line of women eager to catch his attention. With his captivating smile, penetrating gaze, and irresistible presence, Pierre mastered the art of charming, leaving everyone dazzled and longing for more. However, one day his life took an unexpected turn. While relaxing after an especially exuberant party, a letter from his father arrived, carrying with it the weight of a new destiny. The envelope, sealed with the imposing Montaigne family crest, bore news that caused a great upheaval in his life. The message was clear. To inherit the vast family fortune, Pierre had to marry. The news hit him like a blow. He, who had always lived free of commitments, enjoying a life without ties or responsibilities, now found himself forced to abandon his endless parties and seek a wife. Determined to find the ideal partner, Pierre began attending social events with a new goal in mind, something he had never seriously considered before. At one of these grand balls, surrounded by a crowd of aristocrats and influential nobles, his eyes fell upon a young woman of breathtaking beauty. Her hair, golden like rays of the sun, and her eyes, blue like shimmering sapphires, instantly captivated Pierre. She moved with sublime grace and natural elegance, and he simply could not take his eyes off her. After some discreet inquiries, Pierre discovered that the young woman was Mademoiselle Elise Chevalier, a lady of extreme beauty and reserved personality, belonging to one of the most noble and respectable families in society. Pierre, with his usual insight and confidence, thought to himself, "She will be the perfect wife. If I must marry, it will be with her." However, Elise had already heard of Pierre's romantic adventures and his reckless lifestyle. His reputation as a libertine and womanizer was widely known, and far from fascinating her, it deeply repelled her. When Pierre asked Elise's parents for her hand in marriage, she promptly refused, determined not to submit to the man she considered despicable. But at that time, social and financial interests often prevailed over personal desires, especially in the case of women. Elise's parents, aware of the financial and social advantages of such a union, forced her to accept Pierre's proposal, a decision that would change both their destinies. The Chevalier family would be richly rewarded for this marriage, and Elise's father, a pragmatic businessman, did not see Pierre's bad reputation as an obstacle. To him, the alliance would strengthen both families and bring incalculable benefits. Elise, for her part, felt betrayed and trapped by this forced decision. The idea of being compelled to marry a man whose life was marked by irresponsibility and superficiality filled her with bitterness and frustration. She hated the fact that Pierre viewed marriage merely as a formality to secure his fortune, without any consideration for the feelings involved. With a heavy heart and filled with sorrow, she accepted the unwanted engagement, already consumed by resentment and sadness. Pierre, on the other hand, soon realized that winning Elise's heart would be a much greater challenge than any card game or party he had ever faced. Before the wedding, it was customary for the groom to visit his bride to get to know her better and try to build some connection. When Pierre arrived at the elegant Chevalier family residence, he was greeted by a servant who, visibly uncomfortable, informed him that Mademoiselle Elise refused to see him. She was upset and did not want his presence. Used to winning over difficult hearts with ease, Pierre simply smiled, convinced that he could eventually tame this wild beast. Disappointed but not discouraged, he left Elise's house and returned to the familiar comfort of his grand parties and the women who had always adored him. Since his adolescence, Pierre had frequented the most prestigious brothels in the city, a habit he had acquired thanks to his libertine uncle, who took him to those places when he was only 14 years old. Now at 30, Pierre was known as an insatiable and remarkable lover. His presence in these establishments of entertainment was always eagerly anticipated, and the most demanding women competed fiercely to win his attention, eager to experience his famous charms. Despite all of Elise's efforts to avoid the disgusting Count, as she secretly called him, the fateful day of the wedding inevitably arrived. For her, it was a day filled with sadness and resignation. While everyone around her celebrated with smiles and toasts, Elise felt as though she were being led to the guillotine. Poor Elise. Being forced to unite with a man she deeply despised was a personal tragedy from which she could not escape. If you've enjoyed the story so far, make sure you're subscribed to our channel, because the next ones will be even more thrilling, and you won't want to miss them. So let's continue. The wedding was a grand event, full of pomp and circumstance, as was expected from a union between two such noble families. The families of the bride and groom were ecstatic. Pierre's family hoped this marriage would reform him, finally turning him into a respectable man, while Elise's family saw this union as a unique opportunity to rise even higher in society and consolidate their position. After the grand and sumptuous party, filled with vibrant music, elegant dances, and luxurious banquets that lasted until the early hours of the morning, it was time to return to reality. Elise was taken by Count Pierre to live in her new home, the majestic Montaigne family castle. The structure, of impressive proportions, stood atop a hill, surrounded by lush gardens full of exotic flowers and perfectly aligned stone paths. Tall stone walls, mossy with age, surrounded the property, offering privacy and reinforcing the air of power and prestige that the residence exuded. As she entered the castle, Elise was immediately enveloped by its interior splendor. The castle was not only imposing on the outside but also resplendent within. The vast halls were decorated with intricate tapestries, crystal chandeliers that sparkled with the light of candles, and majestic paintings adorning the walls, all depicting members of the Montaigne lineage in noble and austere poses. The corridors seemed endless, and every detail of the decor, from the carved furniture to the luxurious rugs, reflected the prestige and wealth that the family had flaunted for generations. While Pierre, relieved from the exhaustion of the ceremony and the social interactions he so enjoyed, retreated to the vast and cozy library, a glass of wine in one hand and a satisfied expression on his face, Elise was led by the castle's housekeeper to the couple's bedroom. The housekeeper, an austere-looking woman with gray hair tied in a severe bun but with a notoriously kind heart, accompanied the young bride with a professional demeanor, but discreetly attentive to her emotional state. Elise, with a heavy heart and chest compressed by anguish, could barely absorb the magnificence around her. The bedroom, which would now be her refuge, was adorned with dark wood furniture and crimson velvet curtains, hanging heavily around the windows that offered a magnificent view of the gardens. However, all that opulence could not soothe the whirlwind of emotions stirring within her. She knew her new life was just beginning, but what should have been an auspicious new beginning for many was, for her, a golden prison, a gilded cage where the exterior splendor painfully contrasted with her inner sadness and despair. Every luxurious detail seemed to intensify the weight of responsibility and the fear of the unknown that came with the forced marriage. She looked around with tear-filled eyes, unable to see any beauty in that world of luxury because her soul was consumed by pain and uncertainty. In that solitary moment, left alone in her room, Elise wondered with a tight heart if she would ever find happiness in this life that had been imposed on her. The idea of spending the rest of her days with a man she despised was unbearable, and she saw no way out, trapped between familial duty and her own repressed desires. Meanwhile, at the other end of the castle, Pierre, completely oblivious to his young wife's inner torment, continued to savor his wine, his feet resting on a leather armchair, lost in his own thoughts. For him, the marriage was merely another social achievement, and he was far from imagining the challenges that awaited him in his new life as a husband. A month had passed since the luxurious wedding, and the relationship between the two had hardly progressed. Pierre, to his astonishment, still had not managed to spend a single night in the same room with Elise. Every night, he found himself facing the same question that hammered at his restless mind. What am I doing wrong? I've always been irresistible. There's never been a woman who didn't throw herself at my feet, begging for my love and attention. Elise's resistance was something completely beyond his comprehension. Despite his vast experience in the art of seduction, Pierre had forgotten a fundamental truth about the human heart. Not all women are easily won. Some, like Elise, guard their feelings and protect themselves with a barrier of mystery and resistance that few men can decipher. Impressed and at the same time challenged by his wife's resilience, Pierre decided that this time, he would have to adopt a different approach. To him, winning Elise had become a personal goal, a challenge he was determined to overcome at any cost. First, he abandoned the habit of knocking on her bedroom door every night, a practice that had already proven fruitless. Instead, he began to observe her discreetly, trying to learn about her tastes, habits, and interests. He noticed that she spent hours admiring the castle gardens, always peeking through the windows of the main hall, as if seeking some comfort in the beauty of the flowers and the tranquility of the nature surrounding the castle. It was then that, in a rare moment of inspiration, Pierre decided to invite her for a walk in the gardens. To his great surprise and immense joy, Elise accepted the invitation, though with some hesitation. In that simple gesture of acceptance, Pierre glimpsed a small but significant opening. Perhaps, he thought, he was finally beginning to unravel the secrets of his wife's heart. They walked among the beautiful flowers of the garden, and although Pierre had always been a master of seductive words, this time, he chose to be sincere and kind, a new and surprising approach for someone like him. During the walk, they talked about a variety of subjects, from their childhoods, marked by moments of joy and challenges, to their dreams, so different yet so similar in essence. They also shared their deepest fears, those that few dare to confess. Little by little, Elise began to discover a side of Pierre she had never imagined, a vulnerable and honest side that he had never shown to anyone before. These morning walks in the gardens became a habit, something they both began to look forward to eagerly. As time passed, Elise, who initially felt like a prisoner in the castle, began to open up more, revealing thoughts and feelings she had previously kept only to herself. Pierre, in turn, became increasingly fascinated by her intelligence and inner strength. He began to admire not only her external beauty, which had always captivated him, but also her courage and determination, qualities he did not see in the women he usually involved himself with. Without realizing it, Pierre stopped frequenting the brothels that had once been his refuge. The women he knew in those places, with their easy smiles and empty promises, no longer sparked the same interest. He wanted something more, something real. He wanted to win not only Elise's body but, above all, her respect and her love. One cold and clear morning, as they walked through the gardens, Pierre stopped beside a marble fountain, its gentle sound of water seeming to echo the tranquility of the moment. He looked deeply into Elise's eyes, his gaze revealing a sincerity she had never seen before. "Elise," he began, his voice soft, almost a whisper, "I know our marriage started in a way that neither of us wanted, but I want you to know that I'm willing to change. I want to be a man worthy of your respect and perhaps one day your love." Touched by Pierre's unexpected honesty, Elise gave a slight smile, perhaps the first genuine smile he had seen since they married, and responded calmly, "We shall see, Pierre, we shall see." From that moment, a new journey began for both of them. Pierre, who had always been known as an unshakable seducer, now found himself in the unexpected position of being the one conquered. Each day was an internal struggle for him, not to dominate, but to become worthy of Elise's heart. And gradually Elise, who had once despised him, began to see that there was more to Pierre than rumors and her own initial antipathy had allowed her to see. A new feeling began to stir in Pierre's heart, something he had never experienced before. Every moment spent with Elise became special, a new discovery. He found himself smiling simply for being near her, admiring her beautiful eyes, which shone like stars on a clear night, listening to her soft and melodious voice, and watching the sun reflect on her golden hair. For Pierre, these moments were precious, and he could no longer ignore how much his life was changing because of her. Elise, on the other hand, also began to notice changes within herself. During the long conversations they shared while walking through the gardens, or on rainy afternoons when they stayed inside the castle, talking by the fireplace, she grew to value Pierre's company more and more. The stories and experiences he shared revealed a complex person, someone very different from the libertine she thought she knew. Slowly, she realized that her initial disdain for Pierre was largely fueled by rumors and the malicious words of those around her. She could not deny that Pierre was truly charming. His mesmerizing smile and gentle manners were undeniably attractive, but for Elise, what really mattered was the transformation he was willing to undergo for her. Unlike many who expect others to change to meet their expectations, Pierre was changing to earn the right to belong to Elise's world. This, in itself, meant much more than any superficial gesture of seduction. Suddenly, without realizing it, Elise's heart began to open to her husband, the man who was trying to change. Winter arrived, bringing with it the biting cold of the frosty nights in Pierre's castle. On one particularly cold night, Elise retreated to her bed, but the feeling of loneliness seemed amplified by the silence and the snow that fell relentlessly outside. The fireplace was lit, but it wasn't enough to warm her heart, which longed for more than just physical warmth. Then she heard a soft knock on the door and Pierre's voice, laden with concern. "Elise, would you like some tea to warm up?" She got up, wrapped in her wool coat, and opened the door. There stood Pierre, holding a tray of hot tea, with a look of care and tenderness. "Of course, Pierre. It's very cold tonight," she replied, smiling timidly. Pierre entered the room, warmed by the fireplace, and poured 2 steaming cups of tea. They sat side by side, sharing the comfortable silence, with only the crackling of the flames filling the space between them. Although they didn't exchange many words, the looks they shared spoke of affection, desire, and a new understanding. As they drank their tea, Pierre couldn't take his eyes off Elise's golden hair, which shimmered in the firelight. He thought about how sweet and tempting it would be to taste her lips, to feel the warmth of her body close to his. Elise, for her part, felt her heart race every time their gazes met. There was something about Pierre, a mix of strength and vulnerability, that attracted her irresistibly. When they finished their tea, Pierre slowly stood up, as if reluctant to leave the room. "Well, I suppose it's time for me to go. Good night, Elise," he said, moving toward the door. But at that moment she called out to him. "The castle is so cold tonight. I'm freezing in this bed. Would you stay tonight to keep me warm?" Pierre's eyes sparkled with a mix of surprise and desire. He closed the door softly and approached Elise. "Of course, my love. I'll warm you in a way that you'll never feel cold again," he said with a mix of sweetness and mischief in his voice. Pierre's touch was gentle and passionate, and at that moment, all the coldness between them melted away like snow in the sun. They looked into each other's eyes, and the kiss that followed was filled with passion and promises. That night, it wasn't just physical warmth that heated them but the emergence of something much deeper. The warmth of love that had finally found its place between them. I hope you enjoyed this fascinating story, so subscribe to our channel and take the opportunity to watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you next time.